Thank you very much, Speaker. It is indeed an honour and a privilege to rise today on behalf of the Ontario NDP to pay tribute to the life of late MPP Lorne Maeck. Speaker, in his book, The Greatest Generation, Tom Brokaw provides a glimpse into the lives of a cohort of men and women who came of age during the Great Depression, who stepped up to defend our freedoms in the Second World War and returned to post-war communities to set up as citizens leaders who helped shape the institutions and lay the foundations of the communities in which we are all proud to call home. Brokaw sums up the men and women of this era as follows. It may be historically premature to judge the greatness of a whole generation, but indisputably there are common traits that cannot be denied. It is a generation that, by and large, made no demands of homage for those who followed and prospered economically, politically, and culturally because of its sacrifices. It is a generation of towering achievement and modest demeanour, a legacy of their formative years when they were participants in and witness to sacrifices of the highest order. They know how many of their best of their generation didn't make it to their early 20s, and how brilliant scientists, teachers, spiritual and business leaders, politicians, and artists were lost in the ravages of the greatest war the world had seen. Although the book doesn't mention Lorne Maeck by name, a look at Lorne's life makes it clear that he is exactly the type of person that Brokaw brings to life in his words. I never had the privilege of meeting Lorne, and I look forward to the remarks from the member from Parry Sound, Muskoka, and the member from St. Catharines for their more personal recollections of the type of man that he was. One of the highlights of the tributes is that they remind us of the humanity of this place, something that is unfortunately lost in the cut and thrust of partisan politics. In reading up on Lorne in preparation for today, the articles and the accounts of his professional life and contributions to his community give us a good look into what made this man a special person. Though clearly a proud son of Northern Ontario, the distinct traditions of the special part of the province, the story of Lorne's origins resonate with people from all walks of life, from Timmins to Windsor and Thunder Bay to Ottawa. A second-generation Canadian of humble beginnings, Lorne understood that his opportunities were not just the product of hard work, and we know that he worked hard, but were also the result of incredible efforts and sacrifices from those who came before him. You see, Speaker, the common thread in Lorne's vocations and careers was that serving others was what mattered most. Lorne's first memorable act on the road to a lifetime of public service came at age 17, when he left high school to enlist in the Royal Canadian Air Force during World War II. Upon returning home, Lorne joined the OPP, rising to the ranks of detective over the course of his policing career. Even Lorne's many business ventures encapsulated this idea of service, including the ownership of a gas station, furniture store, and a bus company. Throughout his many successful careers, Lorne was never far from public service and political life, entering the public arena as councillor and then reeve as his hometown of South River prior to securing the nomination of the PC party for the riding of Parry Sound. While the Conservatives boast a proud tradition in the Parry Sound area with PC representation dating back decades, Lorne's success as MPP follows the same pattern as the rest of his life. Work hard, build on the opportunities provided by others, and create new opportunities for those who have followed in your footsteps, just as others had done for you. And Lorne was no shoe-in for the post, Speaker. He wasn't even the favourite for the PC nomination, but he understood something that is an essential lesson for those who aspire to public office. His success didn't come through the many accolades and accomplishments he brought to his candidacy, but was established by his commitment to being the best possible representative that he could for his community. Although Lorne won the seat in his first try, his success was cemented by the work he did during the early stages of his tenure as MPP, building a reputation as an effective advocate for the people of Parry Sound. As a result, his efforts as their voice at Queen's Park didn't go unnoticed at home, and a tough first election turned into a string of success that helped him remain a fixture of Queen's Park in spite of successive minority governments in the mid-1970s. Through all of his success at Queen's Park, where he served as parliamentary assistant, chief government whip, and finally as the Minister of Revenue, back when we had revenue in this place, Speaker. Lorne never forgot that his primary responsibility was to be the voice of his riding, going as far as to open his home to people of his community to address their concerns, even as a cabinet minister with his kitchen as a de facto constituency office. At this time, I'd like to say special thanks to Lorne's family members who join us here today. The life of an MPP has its challenges, but they're not carried only by the person whose name is on the ballot. Often it is our families who make the greatest sacrifices in order for us to have the privilege of serving our province. Thank you for sharing Lorne with us. In the end, Lorne's career as MPP followed the same arc that marked much of his life. He took the opportunity that had been given to him and through his hard work and dedication used it to create opportunities for those who followed, including his successor, who joins us here today, who also narrowly won the nomination and then followed Lorne's commitment to his community and service to build an effective career of his own. The legacy that Lorne leaves isn't just about political achievements, but serves as a testament to politics at its best, when a representative's longevity isn't determined by the party we represent, but it is a result of our commitment to the communities we have the privilege of serving. We would all do well to follow in his footsteps in this regard. Lorne, thank you for your service to Northern Ontario and to the people of this province.
Further tribute, Deputy House Leader and member from St. Catharines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a bit of an advantage over perhaps some of the House that I actually served with many of the people who are being eulogized these days, including Lorne Maeck. And I do recall, as I know, I served with the father of John Yakabuski and Norm Miller, who both knew Lorne Maeck extremely well and would testify to the fact that he was an extremely dedicated member of this legislature and also a nice guy. I mean, the two don't always go together. Sometimes some people are nice people and members of the legislature, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But Lorne Maeck was both, I want to assure you of that. I was particularly intrigued by a story he was telling about his humble beginnings, and it goes to the fact that we in Canada and we in Ontario, if we bring it to the provincial level, have an opportunity, even from very humble beginnings, to be able to serve in high public office. He rose to the category of being a cabinet minister as well, and chief government whip, to, if not prestigious, areas of endeavour, extremely important areas of endeavour for a government. Here's a little description of the home, and this is quoting Lorne. We were a very poor family. Our furniture was all homemade. There were no chairs, just benches made from slab wood we got from the sawmills. We had beds that were oak bags sewed together to the size of the bed and filled with beaver grass. Now that is truly a humble beginning, and of course there's 8 children in the family at the time, so there's a lot of competition for the attention of parents. And you know that there were early struggles that took place, but Lorne overcame those. He was a successful businessman, as has been mentioned by the representative of the New Democratic Party. He also served in our Air Force, of course, which we thank him very much for, and in the Ontario Provincial Police, as well as running local businesses and being part of the community and adding to the economic benefit of the community. Somebody who learned a lot from him is in the gallery today, and that's a person who is affectionately known as Landslide Ernie, and that is the former Premier of the Province of Ontario, Ernie Eves, who, after Lorne vacated the seat, rolled to victory by 6 votes after that. Now, that's a clear indication of how much Lorne was liked and the reputation it established, that it would be difficult to follow in those footsteps. But nevertheless, I'm sure that the successor to Lorne Maeck, who sits in the Speaker's Gallery now, learned a lot from him and was a strong supporter of his. It's also interesting to note, because we who serve in the legislature today, and again I go back to Mr. Yakabuski and Mr. Miller, if you go back far enough, there were not constituency offices. So the people came to the House. So Lorne Maeck had to, after spending some time in Toronto with the legislature in session, would go home and there would be people in the kitchen, the living room, and down the basement who would be receiving their assistance from the member himself or herself in those days, compared to today where we have constituency offices that have computers, that have all kinds of electronic equipment and have some significant staff. And that is progress. That's a result, I think, of the Camp Commission that happened. So it was very challenging in those days, and it meant even more onus on the family to be part of the operation of a so-called constituency office that you would have in a community. Second, it's interesting to note that those who serve in rural communities, and many in the House do today, recognize how much of a challenge that is, because you're representing not just one constituency. I have the privilege as an urban member representing three-quarters of the city of St. Catharines, so I have one city I deal with. I have school boards, which are one in this particular case, a Catholic board and a public board and a French board, French Catholic and French Protestant board. So what we had is a different circumstance as urban members. The people who are in rural areas have to travel an awful lot, and so we often kid them about the mileage claims that they happen to have because they travel so much. But they genuinely do travel a lot, and some of them actually encounter OPP officers who are sitting there with, shall we say, cameras trying to determine the speed of those individuals. So they're much more vulnerable. And I really think that serving a rural constituency, a remote constituency particularly, is very difficult. So we're extremely grateful for him. And the last thing I want to mention, because other things will be mentioned, he was the chief government whip in a minority parliament. And that was a very difficult thing to do. I liked his comment that he had that during his political career he moved from parliamentary assistant to Minister of Natural Resources, and it talked about the fact that when you're a House leader, to make the minority situation work, Mack and other House leaders would sit down with their counterparts from the Liberal and New Democratic parties to go through the legislation and budgets line by line to reach compromises. Remember, it was a little bit rocky from 75 to 77 because it was a new experience for all members who were sitting at that time with minority government. From 77 to 81, I have to say that if I have ever observed minority government in this province, it worked best from 1977 to 1981, and we can thank Lorne Maeck and those who worked with him for making it a success at that time, make it operate as the people of this province would want. We're very grateful once again to yet another family who have shared that member of that family with all of the people of the province of Ontario, and in particular with their constituency. Once again, our province is a better place because Lorne Maeck has served in this legislature.
Further tribute. The member from Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to pay tribute to Lorne Howard Mack, former MPP for the great riding of Parry Sound. But first, let me welcome members of the family that have made it here to the legislature today. Son Doug Mack and his wife Ada, daughter Janice and husband Steve Witter. Son Peter and his wife Sharon are not able to be here today, but Mr. Speaker would like a copy of the proceedings, as you are always so good at providing. And I'm so happy that the former member for Parry Sound and Parry Sound Muskoka and former Premier of the province, Ernie Eves, has taken the time to be here. Thank you, Ernie, and it's always great to see Steve Gilchrist, who's head of the retired parliamentarians, taking the time to be here, and former Speaker Warner, who also comes to many of these proceedings. I had the pleasure of knowing Lorne Maeck personally. In fact, I have a great picture in my home that I treasure with three Parry Sound MPPs, Lorne Maeck, Ernie Eves, and me. It was taken at the 2005 funeral of longtime former MPP Alistair Johnson. And many of Lorne's family have been very helpful to me come election time. Niece Gail Mack has very successfully run my election operations in South River for all of my elections since 2001. Gail and Les Mack wanted to be here today, but they're away at someplace warmer today, unfortunately. Lorne grew up in a tiny log cabin near South River. where his parents, Otto and Miss Silva, raised 8 children. Lorne was the youngest of the family. In an interview with the Almaguan News, Lorne said, "We were a poor family. Our furniture was all homemade. There were no chairs, just benches made from slab wood we got at the sawmills. We had beds that were oak bags sewed together to the size of the bed and filled with beaver grass." From these humble origins, Lorne went on to do so many things. He left high school at grade 10, served in the Royal Canadian Air Force in the Second World War as a wireless air gunner. On his return to Canada, he served in the Ontario Provincial Police as becoming a detective. He was a true entrepreneur. After the OPP, he went on to operate several different businesses, including a gas station, bus company, and furniture store. He started his political career on council and then as reeve of South River. When former MPP Alistair Johnson retired, with the encouragement from Johnson, Lorne decided to run for the PC nomination. It was a tough battle for the nomination. That included the reeve of Burk's Falls, Stan Darling, who went on to be the MP for Parry Sound, Dr. Jack Mackay of Parry Sound, and Race Macklem of Parry Sound. Lorne won, but there were some hard feelings on the west side of Parry Sound that someone from East Parry Sound had won again. In fact, Race Macklem ran as an independent in the general election, and I checked the records, he came in second with 25% of the vote. And when I checked the poll results for West Parry Sound area, Macklem soundly won most of the polls around the town of Parry Sound. So after the election, Lorne Maeck reached out to Ernie Eves, a young lawyer from the town of Parry Sound, to make peace and get support from the town of Parry Sound. When I spoke with former Premier Eves, he told me that Lorne Maeck was one of the reasons he got involved in politics. Ernie ended up joining the Parry Sound Riding Association and served with a guy by the name of Mike Harris. At the time, the Parry Sound riding included Nipissing Township and stretched all the way to Mattawa. So Lorne had a pretty good riding association with 2 volunteers who would both go on to be Premier of Ontario. Son Doug told me that he has a photo with young Mike, Ernie, and Lorne. In fact, Ernie Eves and Mike Harris met while serving on the Parry Sound PC Riding Association. Ernie went on to serve as Lorne's association president and campaign manager. I spoke with former Premier Mike Harris, who confirmed that he was volunteering both the Nipissing and Parry Sound Riding Associations, as his home was in one riding and his business was in the other. He said that many people in Nipissing would travel down to South River to meet with Lorne, who was a government member, at his home with their provincial issues, as Nipissing adopted Lorne as their member. He said Lorne always had time for him and other people from Nipissing. Former Premier Harris said he would have liked to be here today, but he is out of the country. Lorne went on to serve Queen's Park on many different committees and select committees as parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Natural Resources. Then in 1976, he was appointed the Chief Government Whip by Premier William Davis. Lorne had great respect for the Premier and told me that he really enjoyed the job of whip, especially because it gave him close access to Premier Davis. Son Doug told me that Lorne was in awe of Premier Davis, the only person he referred to as the boss. I spoke with former Premier Davis, who said that Lorne was a very decent individual, committed to his constituency, liked by everybody, that he was very conscious of other people. He talked about how Lorne enjoyed his passion of woodworking in retirement, and that Lorne would send a gift of his handiwork each year at Christmas to Davis. Lorne went on to be Minister of Revenue from 1978 until his retirement in 1981. Lorne was very easygoing and not afraid to get his hands dirty and help out. Niece Gail Mack told me the story of when Premier Bill Davis was coming to visit their campaign office in South River. Lorne showed up in his jeans and his plaid shirt to help get things ready for the visit. Some guy came in and started giving Lorne orders. Lorne complied at first, before saying, "And who are you?" And the guy replied, "I happen to be security for the Premier." Lorne replied, "Do you know the Minister of Revenue?" The guy replied, "Well, not personally." Lorne replied, "Well, I happen to be him, so stop ordering me around." Lorne loved to play music. He played guitar and sang, and had a band called the Minister of Revenue and his political polecats with band members Bob Mack, Pete Bray, and Ross Gutcher, and they would play at fundraising events for skating club, hockey teams, and other community events. Former Premier Eves told me that Lorne Maeck was a thoroughly decent guy, as honest as the day is long, and one of the reasons I went into politics. He said that people loved him and he took a genuine interest in their affairs. He told me the story when Lorne was Minister of Revenue. 2 government assessors had visited a property to assess it, and one returned later to steal firewood from the property. Lorne learned of this and wanted the assessor fired immediately. When he learned that a minister couldn't just fire people, he instead offered a promotion to him and sent him to the far north and asked him to report back in 2 years. The assessor then quit. And I should mention that Ernie Eves did a fine job delivering the eulogy at Lorne Maeck's funeral in 2014. Lorne retired from politics before the 1981 election, and in a recent interview with the Almaguan News, he talked about returning to the riding after the week at Queen's Park. Maybe that was the hardest part. By the time you got home, you were played out and there were all these people waiting for you, said Mack, noting his kitchen and living room on Marie Street in South River would be lined with constituents waiting for the man to return to speak with him. And as was mentioned, that was prior to constituency offices. He went on to say, being an MPP is a difficult thing. All the problems that really affect people come from the province, said Mack. By the time I had my 10 years in, I was tired. I don't think I could have gone another 4 years. I'm the sort of guy who takes his problems to bed with him. Lorne was married to his lovely wife, Ivy, for 62 years, and in fact, concerns for her health were part of the reason he decided to retire from politics. So thank you to the family of Lorne Howard Mack and for his service to the people of Ontario.